It is the Energy is Love podcast. Obviously, you're aware of that because you are listening to the show. So right now we're sitting down in Portland. We've been here for a few days. We're here for the Float Conference. It's been an amazing experience. Hope you guys are following us on all of our social media out there, Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. Last night I was downtown Portland and we did a Facebook Live video, a little short interview with some of the people that live here in Portland. So that's a lot of fun and we had a really good time with that. We're going to try to do some more of those. So go to our Facebook page, find that video and share it, listen to it, watch it. I think it was a really cool experience. I enjoyed doing it. It was honestly kind of badass. So go check it out, see what you guys think. Remember, always go to energyislovepodcast.com. Find all of our episodes there, and of course, everywhere else you can listen to our show. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Crystal Water Float Spa. Crystal Water Float Spa located in Tooele, Utah. You know, you can go online to crystalwaterfloat.com or check them out at their Facebook page, Crystal Water Float Spa. Now, we all know about Crystal Water Float because we talk about it all the time, and we are here at the Float Conference where it's everything floating you could possibly imagine. Crystal Water is here with Dream Pod because Crystal Water is the nation's only distributor of the amazing Dream Pod. Go check them out. It's Dream Water Float Co. online at dream-pod.com. They are an amazing tank to float in. Super magnificent and wonderful and spiritually amazing. So go to crystalwaterfloat.com or, like I said, dream-pod.com. Remember as well, the podcast is always brought to you by The Bryman, sponsoring small businesses for the past 10 years. On today's episode, I had the wonderful, beautiful, amazing opportunity to sit down with Vivian McKinnon. Vivian was in town for the Float Conference, and she comes all the way from Ireland. She is the owner of Hydro Ease, which is a float center located in Ireland, obviously, because that's where she's from. And we're going to chat about all these wonderful, amazing things. You guys are going to really enjoy this episode. Not only is Vivian a float connoisseur, she's obviously somebody who's deeply embedded into the float community. She has a wonderful float story, but she's also an NLP practitioner. She has all these different modalities and different things that she incorporates and does: timeline therapy, behavioral certified cognitive therapist, hypnosis. She just does a whole bunch of really cool shit. So when I came across her information, I was super excited to get the chance to sit down and chat with her. I know you guys are going to love this episode, so sit back and relax and stay tuned for this wonderful episode of the Podcast for the Universe with Vivian McKinnon.
You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is the Love podcast.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is Love podcast.
The podcast for the universe.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Good morning, Vivian. How are you?
I'm very well, Craig. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. I cannot thank you enough for being on the podcast, for heaven's sakes.
No, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I'm honoured.
All the way.
Honoured.
So tell me about your flight, because you got in late last night, right?
Yeah, I flew from Belfast into Heathrow, and that flight was about an hour and 40 minutes, and then flew from Heathrow to Chicago, which was about 8 hours and 45 minutes. And then from Chicago to Portland, which was about 4 hours.
Oh my goodness.
So I was a bit fried, to say the least, when I got here.
Yeah, I can't blame you. That's a very long flight.
That's it. It was well worth it, though.
Yeah.
Well worth it. Really looking forward to the next couple of days.
And is this your first time at the conference? You've never been before?
No, I've never been before. I first floated in 2004, so I've kind of been following the whole industry since then. So, like last year, I was following everything. I was watching all the updates and things going on and listening to podcasts and stuff then. But a couple of years ago, on my vision board, one of my dream things were, I'm going to go to Portland and go to the conference, and I'm going to do a talk at the conference, and I'm going to do all these cool things, and so here I am, living the dream.
That's way awesome. For some reason, and I don't know what the hell that noise is in the background, but it's the Energy is Love podcast, and we have some weird frequency, vibration, something out there. So you guys out there, when you're listening to this, if you hear that music in the background, that's not our special sound effects that we've placed in. That's just the universe providing some peaceful music.
It's going on in my head. I'm just transmitting it.
So how long has Hydro Ease been open? If I'm not mistaken, it's less than a year, right?
Yeah. We opened in September last year, the end of September. So probably the beginning of October, really, because the first sort of couple of days, it was people coming down. We had the local paper coming down, and it was people that we had kind of invited to come along. So 10 months. It's been cool. How
the heck did you decide you're going to open up your own center? Like, how did that whole thing come into fruition?
Yeah, well, 2004, I had my first float. and within about 5 minutes I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. And I went off and away somewhere, and in the local village that I'd lived in, they had closed down the doctor's surgery because they'd opened a new one. So there was this fantastic building sitting doing absolutely nothing, and I had this vision, this whole dream, this plan of opening a float centre, of having lots of different therapies and having a creche and having, you know, getting the NHS in so as people could have prescriptions for floating. And so I was off and away, and in the middle of that there was like a tiny wee voice that said, do chickens have knees? So I was kind of pulled out of that and thinking, do chickens have knees? Do chickens have knees? Do they have elbows? Do they have... So, and then was like...
Do chicken have knees?
Do chickens have... Floating, what can I say? So, and that was always something that I just really loved, and I had sort of kept an eye on the industry. Moved to Northern Ireland in 2010, and there was no float tanks, no float centres. I think there was one float tank up in Omagh, which was way up the top of Northern Ireland, and it was in a thing called the Angel Sanctuary, and it had like Reiki and angel cards and tarot and things like that. But because the benefits I had from flotation, I wanted to drag it out and have it as a treatment modality sitting on its own, and wanted to, you know, to contribute towards research, and and I was really excited about the whole thing.
That's way cool.
Yeah.
How long have you been? See, when I found all your information and I started researching you and going into all your, not just your website and all the stuff on Facebook and everything like that, but the realization of not only do you practice NLP, but you do so many other, obviously, energy-related stuff.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, this lady's the perfect guest for the show, because we
You've
get to
been
talk about
stalking me.
floating, and then we get to talk about all the cool shit that we talk about on the show all the time, anyways. So let's dive into all the energy stuff, because that's the stuff that I'm like super excited about. I love floating.
Sure.
I love the industry. I love everything about it. But in the end, first off, I always like to learn a little bit about the person's journey, their experience. How did you come into the space of all of the different things that are out there, spirituality and energy and all that kind of thing? Do you know what I mean? How did you come to it? What was your journey like?
I think, for me, I think it's been a lifelong journey. I grew up in a house where my mum was living with the symptoms of addiction, and she had serious trauma issues and was really struggling to cope with the world around her. So my dad kind of became the rock of the family, and he was pulling us all together. But that made for quite a confusing household, because in the house we were being told, you know, like, don't say anything about your mum's drinking, don't say anything about, you know, make sure you don't say anything, make sure nobody needs to know. I mean, this was the 70s.
Yeah.
And then outside the house we were told, you know, tell the truth, do your best. So we had this so I grew up with this really confusing view of the world. And I could walk into the house and I could tell you whether I should go into the living room and say hi and sit and chat with everybody, or just kind of sideline and go straight up the stairs. So from a very early age, I could pick up on energy really quite quickly.
You could feel it, huh?
Yep. And then I became really fascinated with that, and then through my own journey, you know, started to then go down that same path. So I was really struggling to kind of comprehend my reality based on the experiences that I'd had. So I mean, we're met every second of every day by up to 2 million pieces of information. Our brain can only compute 134, which we then chunk into 5 to 7 chunks. So for me, you know, we delete information that's not important to us. We distort information to fit our view of the world, and we generalise things. So I was distorting quite a lot of the information that was coming in, and you know, I was racked with anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, all these negative emotions that I just never really knew how to cope with. And then started to study NLP, and absolutely loved it, and it gave me a real understanding. I had done counselling a couple of times, but and it was really beneficial, but I always felt there was something more. I was kind of like, and then I thought, you know, I'm going to go and find things that and no become somebody else's client or patient or whatever, but really learn it for myself and learn it from my perspective to fit with my view of the world.
Don't you find that's the case a lot of times, where you'll be taught something, you'll go to a class, you'll get your certification, you'll start learning and studying and understanding it, but then it's like, I got to tweak that part for me,
Yeah,
I got to
definitely.
change this. And
And when I learn, especially when I learned cognitive behavioural therapy, I went on a course that was run by therapists for therapists, so you had to do it on yourself. So for about the first 6 or 7 weeks, every week I was coming home and I was saying to my husband, oh, no, my life and he was saying, are you sure you really want to carry on with this? And I was like, yeah, no, I need to keep going, but it really learned me. And the thing is, if I'm sitting with someone and they're really struggling with something, I can sit and genuinely say to them, look, I understand that this is going to be hard for you, because I've genuinely been there. And a lot of therapies and a lot of sometimes a lot of people kind of they have this box and they fit people in their box, and there's restrictions and there's certain ways of doing it. But if you approach therapy like that, then you're going to have people that are too small for that box who rattle around inside it. You're going to have people that are too big that need to have limbs cut off to fit in. So it's very much about having a self-inspired, recovery pathway. So, going and meeting the person where they're at and finding out how are they decoding the world, how have they processed things, what decisions have they made about themselves, about other people, about the world around them, and how is that then impacting on how they're coping or how they're, I suppose, creating their own reality. Because at the end of the day, if there's 2 million pieces of information available to me, and there's 2 million pieces of available information to you, and I'm only computing 134 and you're computing 134, what's the chances we're both creating the same reality? So reality is a very personal thing, and I see it more and more, and I see it loads of times. If someone's upset or someone's happy, or like, I have a really silly, wacky sense of humour, and I'll laugh at silly things and then 10 minutes later think about it and start killing myself laughing again. And my husband will look at me and say, it's really not that funny. But for me it is. For me it really tickles me. And there'll be certain things that he'll maybe find funny, or there'll be certain things that really piss him off. And then I'll say, chill, and he's like, no, but it's because he's creating his own reality, which is what we all do.
Yeah, I totally agree. Mm-hmm. Taking that into consideration, thinking about the way that we create our own reality, and this will get into some kind of deeper things. We don't have to go super deep, even though we do like to discuss all the crazy, bizarre, deep shit.
I love it.
If we create our own reality, and this, I want to get your opinion on it. Do you think that if we have a situation or an experience in our life that we would typically label as negative,
yep,
or something that is not just stressful but kind of a really bad experience, do you think that in turn is something that we've just created? Or do you think that there's some of that cosmic divine, before we get here, we have this soul contract or whatever that we kind of sign up for this? Or what's your opinion? Like, what do you think?
I think we're constantly making decisions, and we very rarely go back and challenge decisions that we've made about ourselves, the world, and people in general from an early age. So to create your own reality and to create and to respond to the world in the way you do is based on the decisions you make. So if you decide to, there's a lot of, are you moving towards happiness, joy, love, peace, tranquility, or are you moving away from anger, sadness, fear, hurt and guilt? Because if you're placing your focus on anger, sadness, fear, hurt and guilt, you're moving backwards. You're moving forward facing backwards. So you're never really going to see what's in front of you. You're never really going to be able to connect to any opportunity or any kind of deviation, any kind of change management, anything like that. Where if you're able to turn yourself around and say, that's where I want to go. I mean, for years in my life, I could tell you what I didn't want. I was single for 8 years because I would always say, if I had a boyfriend or a husband or whatever, well, he wouldn't be doing this and he wouldn't be doing that, and he would. But then, hence why I was single then for 8 years, became so fussy about so many, someone just had to look at me wrong. It was like, oh no, I don't like his eyebrows. Oh no, is it, just like his ears, I don't like the way his ears moves when he says certain words. And my friends were like, what are you like? But then, became very aware of we choose our reality based on how much we decide to let go. Where's our control? Are we reactors or are we responders? So do we constantly, is our focus on external movements and external people saying things, doing things, looking in a certain way that you react quickly, so you're always controlled from the outside? Or do you respond? Do you allow people to do whatever they want and give them the freedom to do whatever they want? And then choose yourself how you're going to come back from that.
Yeah.
So sometimes just taking a measured response and allowing people to kind of go, well, that's the way they are. That's the way they're processing their own reality. And sometimes we just have to let them.
Yeah.
You know,
Just sit
for our
back.
own sanity, you know,
For
we just
sure.
have to let them. Yeah.
I want to talk to you about hypnosis, because I think that there's a really, really big... Well, actually, I had another question that popped into my head.
Sure.
As far as the culture from Ireland and the society as a whole and everything like that, do you think that it's easier to... Well, how much more accepting is the culture of all of this kind of cosmic, weird, spiritual stuff?
Yeah. I'm actually based in Northern Ireland, so it's still very much part of the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there's been 30 years of conflict in Northern Ireland, and then we've had 20 years in a peace process. So there's a lot of people think, you know, hypnosis is, oh no, you know, I would lose control and it's look into my eyes,
Yeah.
look at my watch. Hypnosis is an altered state of consciousness. So if you know, watching TV and someone coming and putting a drink down in front of you and then going away and then you kind of going, oh, where did that come from? That's hypnosis, because you have an altered state of consciousness. In Hydries, what we've done is, to highlight this to people, because a lot of people would come and say, oh no, I could never be hypnotised.
You can't hypnotize
No,
me.
you can't. Oh no,
Yeah.
I'm one of these people that just we can all be hypnotised. So as you come in, we have like a burner, and it floats through all different colours, and it gives out really nice oils and things like that. So people walk in, and right away they go, oh, that's a lovely smell. And then you come in, and we have everything. You know, it looks like a sitting room. You know, it's a really sort of homely kind of feel. And we have a mezzanine floor, so it's really open. You then go up the stairs, and we've created a garden inside. So there's lots of plants and things like that on top of the roof, where the
Oh,
kitchen and the
that's
bathroom.
beautiful.
And we're going to put. We're in the middle of doing. We're going to start doing an art program, and have people painting canvases and stuff, and change it every month and have it up there. So people then come up and they're like, oh wow, that's really cool. Oh, this is really nice up here. And I've got, like, you know, all different coloured chairs, and they've all got cushions on them, and it's not like, it doesn't look uniformed. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
very mishmatch. It's very
Like eclectic with everything.
exactly to highlight. That's exactly what we're like. We're eclectic. You know, we're not we're not, you know, totally symmetrical. We're not. Everything's not. You know, we're not perfect. We're not these
Yeah.
perfect things. And then you come into the room where I do the one-to-ones, and I have like a big throne, and I have just a clear space. So when people are doing the work, they can get up and kind of, you know, they can walk back into the past, or they can then walk back and they can walk into the future, or they can stop now, they can step off their timeline, they can do all this cool stuff. And then they'll come in and say, no, I can't be hypnotised. So I would say to them, when you walked in the door there, did you change your state from when you'd been outside? Do you know, when you mentioned about the smell? Oh yeah, it was lovely. I just instantly felt relaxed, right? And then when you came up the stairs, did your state change again? Oh yeah, when I seen that garden, it was really, it's like nature, and it's like, you're hypnotised. Do you know what I mean? You're hypnotised. You're responding to external stimuli. And a lot of the decisions and things we make in our head, become the programs that we then live to. Become the, you know, we're programmed by so many things around about us. Even, you know, somebody doing something in a certain way, we can then pick that up. I mean, like, I have a 3-year-old, so watching the way that he's responding, now that I've done all this training, watching the way that he's responding to the world. You know, he's a typical wee boy, he bounces off the walls. So I've started doing yoga with him, and it's this kids thing on YouTube, and he absolutely loves it. And so he goes completely from being like, wah, to like, oh yeah, we're doing yoga. And he'll stand on one leg and he says namaste. Although he did have one of the older boys in a headlock going, namaste. I was like, no, Sonny, that's really not the way we're supposed to do it.
That's not what that word means.
No, that's it. But yeah, I think it's, you know, people have a perception of things,
Yeah.
and it's all about changing perceptions. You know, like my son's girlfriend's dad, I was sitting chatting with him, and he was saying, do you know, I don't know if I believe in it. And I was saying, well, do you know, do you believe that you can change your state by somebody else's actions, or by watching TV, or, you know, can you be sucked into things? And he was like, oh yeah. And I was like, well, that's hypnosis. You know, it's changing your state from one thing to another, and being able to link into what's going on inside you, because that's where you make the changes. You know, there's nobody else going to come along and say, right, this is what you need to do, and that's what you need to do. I mean, I have clients that come, and it's the end of the session, and they go, right, that's so that's the end of this, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, and I'll see you next week. And they go, right, okay then. And then they go away, and I love it when I see them going out, you know, with that really confused, like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And then they come back the next week and say, do you know, last week, see, after I left here, a couple of hours later, I was thinking this happened and that reminded me of a time that this and that, and blah. And do you know what? That phobia I have, that's where that's came from. cool, you worked it out yourself.
Very nice.
At the end of the day, that's what we do. But that's what we all need to do, is just work it out ourselves.
Do you incorporate, like, would you have somebody that would specifically, and I'm sure you probably do, where they come and they're not just there to flow, but they're there to, they're going to sign, or they're going to have like a session with you where it's a hypnosis focus session, or you're going to, the timeline therapy or something like that. But do you find when you start working with them that you're just incorporating all these kind of different aspects of it?
I've developed a thing called RAFT, which is recovery and flotation therapy. So you do an hour with me and then you go into the tank. And what that then does is allows you a really clear space.
What do you call it?
RAFT.
RAFT.
And like the logo's like a flotation device, that you would see at the side of the beach. So I would work with people and get them, find out what is. So first of all, I would say, when did you make the decision that you wanted to come and do this today? So right away, I'm not saying why are you here, because if you say why are you here, then they'll say, well, my wife said, or my sister or my brother, or my mum always told me, or something like that. And we tend to want to finger point, and kind of go, oh, it's not us, it's not anything we've done, it's because of them. And if and again, if we always, if we're always thinking that other people control how we are, then we never really have full control of ourselves. So it's about kind of saying, so as I say, when did you make the decision to come here and do this? Well, I decided, and then they'd start. But the recovery and flotation therapy is based on all the different therapies that I have. I'm training in September in a thing called havening, which is a psychosensory approach. So it's tailoring a specific recovery pathway for that person, whatever it is that person is bringing into the room. So for example, I've been working with a local DJ, and he came and he was kind of like, I've travelled the world, but I'm an East Belfast boy, that's it, I'll always come back to here, but there's so many things I want to do, but I'm not really very sure, and I would love to be able to do this and I'd love to be able to do that, but I would really need to have this conversation and that so he already knew, he was telling me that he knew what he had to do, but then he's going, but I just really don't know what I should be doing. So I was kind of going, right. So we then looked at, what are your values? What are the things that really mean something to you? And then looked at them. What's the opposite of them? What's the exact opposite of that? Where are you on that scale? So I could then figure out, is he moving away from something, or is he genuinely moving towards something? So within 3 sessions, he'd done 3 sessions with me and then 3 sessions in the float cabin. He had a business plan. He had 2 people on board. He had a potential funder. That was within the space of 3 weeks. This guy had spent months, debilitating, going over this stuff in his head, thinking, should I do this, should I do that? I have another client who's in the emergency services, and he lots of different things kind of going on for him. So and a lot around trauma and a lot around unresolved, things that have happened, unresolved experiences. So he absolutely loves it. He's done about 10 sessions now. So he's done 10 sessions with me, 1-to-1, and 10 sessions floating. And made a huge difference to his life.
And do you do them in sync with each other? So like you said, you'll finish up the session with you and then they'll go and hop
straight in the cabin.
Yeah.
Because then what happens is we, on an unconscious level, we like to pattern match. We like things to be the same as or similar to. And recent experiences, I find people will take recent experiences into the cabin with them. So they'll come out and they'll say, do you know, something's been bothering me for weeks and I was thinking about it in there and blah, blah. So the last thing they kind of think about when they go into the cabin, and anybody who's gone into the cabin, I would always, so people turn up late and they're like, God, I'm late and I couldn't find the place and I'm so stressed and this. I'm like, right, take 5 minutes. Just take 5 minutes to centre yourself. Go through because we have a post-float room and we have like candles and like rock salt lamps and it's just a really chilled place to be, and bottles of water. Just take your time, go in there and just kind of and gather yourself and and then I'd say, why did you decide to come and float? So it's linking them straight back into, all right, I'm here for whatever reason. So they're not going to go in there and they're not going to go in the cabin and taking all that negative energy from the traffic that they've just experienced and no finding the place and driving around in circles or whatever. So yeah.
That's way cool. That's a super cool thing. My wife
Love
and
it.
I do something similar because we were talking ahead of time in the spa that we work at back in Tooele and everything like that. We'll do things similar like that where we'll sit down with them and have a session and then ideally they just go and hop right in the tank and it just really gives that time for all of that stuff that has just, whether it's kind of been unearthed and come out and been exposed in a sense where they start to deal with it, gives it time to kind of soak in and marinate, but in such an environment that you get when you float where it's not as harsh, I think, where it's kind of a little bit easier and a smoother transition. And because sometimes some of the things that come up are obviously incredibly difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
And so now you just get to lay back and you get to flow.
Mm-hmm. And I've even had people, you know, recently I had a girl that came out and she just laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and then burst into floods of tears. And, you know, and I was saying, you know, has there been stuff going on? And she was going, no, nothing. And after she left, you know, I was kind of thinking that was obviously a huge emotional release. And whatever it is, whatever reason, she's just not ready to speak about it.
Yeah.
But for her, it was, you know, it's because she kind of came out like, what? You know yourself, when people float for the first time,
Yeah.
they have that really sort of that glazed kind of.
They kind of stumble out of the room and they come and sit down and they're like, I don't know what's going on.
That's it. That's it. And I think where we are, we're in an innovative business park. So when you come out, you know, we're not on a main street. We're not, you know, there's not a lot of traffic. There's not, you know, people come out and it's really quiet and it's really chilled and it's just, you know, you actually see them coming out and just going, I have to say, right, let's get on with it now, and then they jump in their cars or go down for the bus or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But even like we just saying, when people first come into float, I would always say to them, have you floated before? Do you know much about flotation? And I would go through, you know, I have a bit of maybe a 10-minute spiel that I would go through that, you know, and I always at some point see them widening their eyes or moving their head or something. And then, so without them actually telling me what it is they're floating for, I can tell by the micro movements in their face and their body and their whatever it is. You know, it could be that they're down like that, writing on the sheets, and then you mention certain something and they're up and they're looking at you, and it's like, so without them even actually saying. So it's no, so they're going in and they feel they've not had to disclose anything, but they know they're floating for the right reasons.
Give me a little bit of that spiel, because I can't imagine that people that listen to this podcast don't have a really good idea of what floating is or what it can do for you or something like that. But because obviously we're here for the float conference and this is one of those episodes that's a float story, give me a little bit of your spiel, a little bit of what you know, somebody comes into the spa and you say, have you floated before? And they say, no, I haven't. I just heard about it from a friend or so-and-so and I'm here to try it out. What do you tell them?
I would then say flotation involves 25 centimetres of body temperature water and half a tonne of Epsom salt. We spend 80% of our energy every day fighting the effects of gravity. So the first thing you experience in a float tank is zero gravity. What then happens is that 80% of energy, instead of being an external force, becomes an internal process, which activates the blood flow, which stimulates both the lymphatic and the digestive system, which puts the body into a state of stable balance. So allows the blood pressure, the heart rate, the pulse, all the bodily functions to come down to exactly where they should be for you, not textbook, where they should be for you. At the same time, because the air and the water and your skin is all set at the same temperature, we experience the world through our 5 senses. So every second of every day we're met by up to 2 million pieces of information from all 5 of our senses, which we then create our view of reality. In a float cabin, the first thing that happens is your kinesthetic sense goes, hang on a minute, where do I end and this environment begins? Hang on, and you start to become one with the whole thing. At the same time, the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system, which becomes so disconnected over time because our bodies give us so many messages for things, and our brain's going, oh, shush, like, hang the washing out, go to work, take the kids, get the dog a walk, go for shopping, and it's just that eventually the body goes, oh, do you know what? So like a niggle in your back that could be there for however long then becomes, you know, you pull it from taking a bag out the boot and you're telling everybody, I never even done anything, where really, you know, you've left it go. So what then happens is your brain drifts off into a brainwave state called theta. And theta is a really nice state that just before you go to sleep at night, where you're not quite sleeping, but you're not quite awake, and you have all these really solution-focused, creative ideas, and you're like, oh, I'm going to sort that, and I'm going to speak to them, and then you get up in the morning and go, oh, damn, what was I thinking last night? I had this totally sorted. And it suspends you there for a good sort of 30, 40 minutes. In that point in time, your brain will release the same endorphins, which is your body's natural painkiller and your body's natural feel-good chemical, as you would in 6 or 7 hours sleep. Now that, also because it activates the lymphatic system, that breaks down and restricts the production of lactic acid, so it softens the muscle from the inside. So as well as softening the muscle from the inside, you're relying on half a tonne of Epsom salt. Your brain's producing chemicals that are pain relieving and mood enhancing, and it just takes you into a complete state of equilibrium and allows everything just to chill and everything just to let go.
You're good. That's a great spiel.
just forgot where I was here.
No,
And
you're
I was
good.
like, whoa.
You're hitting every, and I love the way that you describe it, because everybody, and we've talked about it on the show before, because everybody, whether they own a float center or something like that, or, everybody's got their kind of way that they explain it to people, because it's initially kind of a challenging thing to explain. But yours is beautiful, and I love the way that you incorporate all the different, because that's the thing that's the beauty behind floating, is you hit all these parts of us. So it's not just the fact that you're laying there and you get the physical benefits of it, and you get the mental benefits of it, and then you can really get into the stress reduction and the emotion and the all those different things that can happen. And so it's a really good spiral.
I would even go into, we're born with 306 bones. A lot of that is cartilage. And by the time our bones form and fuse, we're left with 200. That process starts to happen between 8 and 18 months. It just so happens that's the same time that we take to our feet. So from that point onwards, our whole skeletal structure is almost like a scaffold, like a cage, carrying around all our vital organs, our blood, our skin, our everything, and it never gets a chance to just decompress and realign. So if someone's floating for the first time, I'll say to them, it might sound like a bowl of Rice Krispies. In the UK we have Rice Krispies, and their tagline is snap, crackle and pop. So I always say to them, between your lymphatic system stimulating, between the blood flow, stimulating your lymphatic system, and it's breaking down lactic acid. If you've ever had a massage and you hear the popping of the lactic acid, it then stimulates the digestive system, which makes your tummy rumble. And then also the bones are realigning, so sometimes you can crack. So it can be quite noisy in there for the first time. And the same as at the end, we have a timer that goes off, and then the pump starts. And people always say, do people fall asleep? And I'm like, all the time people fall asleep. We had one guy that came out and said, oh, that was amazing, and the spa at the end was just lovely. It's like, no, that's actually the pump. You're not supposed to be in there still.
That means it's time to get your ass out of the tank, because it's time to...
That's it.
That's too funny. Oh my goodness, we're going to change tracks, because this has been itching in the back of my mind, and I want to ask you, and it's going to be a hard question, it's going to be challenging, but when it comes to all these different things that you do, we'll ease into it. What do you find helps you the most personally in your own space to kind of manage your own personal spiritual well-being and health? What do you do?
I do lots of different stuff. I do, I float twice a week. I deliver laughter yoga classes, and I find them hugely beneficial. The body can't differentiate between real laughter in response to something or fake laughter, because the body goes into the same thing. So again, it produces the same endorphins. I try and eat quite well. I think I went through quite a stage of not really just eating anything and everything, where now, Monday to Friday anyway, I would normally try and sort of to eat quite well. I have 8 hours sleep every single night. Without 8 hours sleep, I'm no good to anyone.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of quality time with quality people, like my husband and the kids and things like that. And I think, my whole focus has changed, especially now I find that since I'm floating every week, the whole focus has changed around what is important. Where are my values and why? I think I spent so much of my life living for other people and living for other people's, working towards their agendas as opposed to working towards my own. And because I am a therapist and, working energies and various different things like that, you can sometimes give a lot of yourself to other people. And I think through the training I've done, it's made me realise that unless you're giving just as much to yourself, then what's the point?
Yeah, then
what is the point?
To all the rest, huh?
That's it. I work for the trust in Northern Ireland, and I deliver a thing called mental health first aid. And it's about getting people, because I firmly believe, in every workplace, there is, so if you cut your finger or fall or whatever, the first thing someone will do is get out a book and they'll write down the accident, and and they'll give you a plaster or whatever. But if you walk into the storage cupboard, for example, and there's someone standing in floods of tears, most people would go, and walk back out and close the door. Because in the UK, we just don't talk about the kind of things. It's getting better, it's getting a lot better now.
So like you said back when you were growing up, right? We just don't talk about that kind of stuff.
That's it. It's just you keep it to yourself. And I think more so, Northern Ireland has had 30 years, as I was saying earlier, of conflict, of trauma. 40% of people who live in Northern Ireland live with the symptoms of trauma. They have the highest rate for trauma in the whole world.
Really?
And that was research that was done in Ulster University in 2011. But we also have 25% higher incidence rates of mental health presentations than the rest of the UK. 17% of people who live in Northern Ireland have seen someone killed or seriously maimed in front of them with their own eyes. So you have that, and then you have all the vicarious trauma. So people going and telling stories. You know, there's so many different things. And a perfect example of this is when I was at the school. You know, I think I was in primary 3 or something. All my life, I had this vision of going up to. I always had this belief of I am not good enough. For what, for who, I do not know. But you know, I had this thing, I'm not good enough. So I had this vision of when I was in about primary 2 or 3. I had given you used to queue up with your homework, and the teacher would look over it and send you back to your seat with it. And I'd given her my homework, and she was like, "Oh my God, are you really this stupid?" And got the book, threw it across the other side of the room, got up, went over the other side of the room, and stood on the book, going, "That's the worst homework I've ever seen." And I was
How old are you at this point?
Primary 2 or 3, so I was probably about 7 or 8. But then when I was doing CBT and doing, you know, and learning NLP and all these different things, I remembered that actually never happened to me. That happened to the girl who sat next to me. But because I was so traumatised by what had happened to her, I had sucked in all that energy. You know, I'd kind of sucked it. So then over the years, my unconscious mind had told me that actually happened to you. So, and I think we become, and you know, the thing is, when you remember something, you don't remember the actual original memory. You remember that you access the last time you thought about it. So for example, so say we're chatting here, and then you go out and you're talking to someone else, and they say, and you mention me, and they go, "Oh, I was chatting to her, did you know she blah blah," whatever it is. Then the next time you're chatting to someone about me, you'll tell them all the things I told you, and then you'll say, "And you know another thing," and blah. So you'll add to that memory. So if you have a traumatic memory, and you know, trauma is not an incident, trauma is not the actual event, trauma is how we store it. So something could happen to right here now in front of both of us. I could go away and never think about it again. You could go away and it would be all you think about for weeks, and then you would never be able to process it properly. And it might have included the last thing you smelt was coffee, and the last thing you seen was someone with a purple jacket on. And then you're walking down the street 3 weeks later, and someone walks past with a purple jacket, and your stomach goes, and your heart goes, and your hands are sweating, and you're thinking, wow, here's this feeling again, why is this? But it's because that purple jacket is part of that fragmented memory. And I think, you know, and going back to Raft, it's very much about understanding that you know, a fragmented memory doesn't mean that it's something, you don't always have to be stuck in that loop. You know, it's about stopping the loop and going, right, hang on, what does this part mean? What does that part mean? What does this part mean? What does it mean to me? Not in relation to the actual event itself, but what does it mean to me and how I'm processing it? And it's almost like a record stuck, and every time you hit, but then the more you add to that memory and the bigger it gets, the more triggers there are for it. Because something maybe smells of some, so it's maybe like, you know, maybe the last thing you smell. So as I say, the purple jacket, you maybe then in the back of your head, when it's scouring for things with purple jacket, reminds you that your gran has a purple jacket. So then somebody mentions your grandma, and you have this whole thing starting again, and you're going, so your world becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, because all these things are attaching itself to something that's sitting unresolved.
Yeah, all that trauma that is, it's a weird thing to think about, because, and it's a hard thing to explain to people sometimes, or to have them see that correlation between, you know, they may have memories, or obviously they know what traumatic event that it is that they're dealing with and trying to get over, but then they're like, why the hell am I set off by a purple jacket?
Exactly.
And they don't realize that.
I mean, I worked with a girl who had been through CBT, just pure CBT, and she had this
and
real...
that's the cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Okay.
Yep. And she had this real aversion to people being sick, which then became... like an anxiety, like a phobia, and it was really debilitating. It was really, you know, restricting her life. And so she went through CBT, and they had got it back to her brother had a gastric flu, and he had been sick over her when she was a child. And you know, the therapist was saying, that's what it is, that is what it is. And she was saying, yeah, do you think? And she was saying, yep, that is what it is. So she was kind of like, all right then. So she went away, and for a few weeks she was fine, but then it all started creeping back in again. She was like, I thought I had this resolved, why is this not resolved? We then done timeline, so we looked at going forward, we looked at going back, we looked at all these things, and again she was one of the ones who went away like, what does that mean? But what had happened was when we had got to the guilt, when we were working on guilt, and all she could see for guilt, like normally we would go back to a time, but all she could see for guilt was the word guilt, and it was written in big letters with lights and stuff on it. And I says to her, right, how are we going to go about getting rid of this guilt? And she says, right, we're going to take a hammer to it. And I was like, right, I want you to visualise, how would you, tell me what's happening. So she was like, right, I've got ladders, I'm going to go up and I'm starting to hit this guilt, and and here's my brother coming. My brother's got a set of ladders now as well. And then she was like, we're both hacking away at this, and she was like, oh, here's my dad. My dad's coming. What she hadn't said was that her dad had passed away when she was 15. So she was like, oh, here's my dad. Oh, my dad's really hacking. Now the three of us are really hacking at it. So we'd done all this stuff, and then she went away really confused, and she came back and she says, do you know, I know what it is, I know where it's from. She says, when I was a kid, she said I was maybe about 6 or 7, she said I have this really clear memory of being sick all over my bed, all over the floor, and my dad came in and he was like, look, it'll be fine, it'll be okay. You know, and it was the middle of the night, she says, and he cleaned it up and put clean pyjamas on me and put a clean bed on me and put me back to bed and stroked my hair until I fell asleep. When my dad then passed away, on an unconscious level, I've made this decision that, you know, if I'm ever sick, then there's nobody there to look after it because he's not here anymore. How's that? But that had went from that to this. So it had attached itself to everyone. She had 2 kids, and every time any one of them, kids are sick all the time, do you know what I mean? But as soon as any one of them or anybody mentioned at the nursery that such and such got sent home sick, she would then go, right, and quickly grab the kids. And so she was creating her reality around keeping away from sick people, which had massively impacted her life because she'd became almost like a recluse stuck in the house. But once she made that association, she was going, but that's really daft, do you know what I mean? That's really like, why would I be thinking like that? So it was saying, well, why do you think you're thinking like that? How do you think it would benefit to you think otherwise? How could you change your thinking? What would be the best way for you to do that? What other decisions do you need to challenge? What other beliefs are there because of that? What other things have you incorporated into that over the years? And the last I heard, she was running a marathon. So wow. You know, it's absolutely fantastic, and there's loads of pictures. You know, she's on Facebook, on the Facebook page, so she would put things up and stuff, and it's fantastic to see. So it's almost like, you know, she's cracked that, and it was brilliant because at the end of the thing with guilt, she'd got into this blue ball. It was a blue ball that she had rolled down, and it was rolling into the beach. And I said, how are you going to make sure this blue ball doesn't come back? She said, I'm going to blow it up. I was like, cool. And what are you going to blow it up with? She was like, I'm going to use Acme Dynamite. And I was like, trying my hardest not to laugh. Because I was like, this is real Roadrunner stuff, do you know what I mean? So she blew it up with Acme Dynamite and watched it in the sea blowing up and blah. But obviously doing that and realising, you know, because when we were chatting with the guilt and I was saying, you know, where do you feel it? And what if it was a shape, what shape would it be? And, you know, I want you to really see, hear and feel what it would be about being guilty. And as I say, it became this blue ball that she then rolled up and rolled away. But obviously, and because we process things, on an unconscious level, we use colour, we use shapes, we use, like, for example, if I was to say to you, do you know, I left the airport yesterday and the minute I got on that plane I seen red, you would instantly think of anger. You would instantly think, oh, somebody must have said something or done something. I never said that, I never mentioned anger at all, but the colour. Or if I was to say to you, you know, I felt really good yesterday, but I feel a bit blue today. You know, people would automatically think, oh, she must be feeling a bit sad. Or so we respond to various different things depend on how we've processed it and how we've then, it's called the submodalities. It's how we've put together that experience. So again, you know, like, and again, a lot of energy work is, you know, I want you to feel this white light, you know, coming down from the head and blah, blah, or I want you to feel this, you know, a yellow light or a blue light or whatever it is, or a glow or a fog or something. I want you to breathe in the colour, because colour is such an important thing, you know, in terms of how we process our information.
What has been the biggest thing in your own personal life, the hardest thing for you to manage and get over when it came to all of some of these things that you, like, you know, things that you would typically work with a client and you would help them through? What has been your biggest challenge throughout your life?
I think it would probably be around, you know, around addiction and around, you know, coping strategies and unhealthy coping strategies. You know, I smoked cannabis for 20 years. You know, took loads of different other things. You know, there was always something. When I say, you know, addiction, I don't think I was ever addicted to anything. I was just addicted to numbing the pain, whatever that meant. You know, whether it meant through, you know, like, you know, unhealthy relationships, if it was through alcohol, if it was through, you know, whatever it was, it just helped to numb the pain. But then if you're always masking symptoms, you're never really getting to the root cause. And the only way you ever cure anything, the only way you ever really start to understand stuff is to look at the root cause and look at, well, why am I impacted this way? Why am I feeling this way about whatever it is that's happened?
Do you think that we ever really heal some of those things, or do you think it's just that ongoing process, that thing that is always kind of a work in progress, I guess is a good way to say it?
I personally think when you take the learnings from something, it no longer becomes an emotional it no longer becomes, there's so many people going about with big bags of emotion, and everything's about emotion, and it's always, you made me feel. No, you chose to respond in the way you did. People can act and do whatever they want. I mean, even when it comes to really, like I've had some horrific things happen, and it was always kind of, I'm like that because that happened to me. No, I'm like that because that's how I choose to respond to that situation. That's how I've chose to restore it. And just taking that ownership and taking the learnings, as I said, well, maybe if I hadn't put myself in that situation, or maybe if I hadn't decided to do that, or maybe if I hadn't, and just taking a bit of ownership to it, gives you that control. And at the end of the day, we all want to be in control. It's the thing that we kind of thrive for. There's nothing worse than feeling like you're being controlled by somebody or something else.
Do you think there's actually anything, like when you boil it down to just the meat, the minutia of life itself, do you think that we really are in control?
Are we ever really?
That's a big one, huh?
Totally. I think the more we can have control over things, I mean, there's always be other things that can control us, most definitely. Like you walk across, you walk to the end of the road and there's a red light, you stop, because that controls you. That tells you, and you're programmed that you stop at that light. Yeah. If something happens and you feel you're in the right, but somebody else is really upset by something, then you have that, you kind of give them that control, and you kind of go, well, I really want to say something just now, but you're really upset, and I really don't want to make things any worse for you. Or there's lots of different forms of control, and sometimes we need to be controlled by forces outside us, because there's things that are out with our control. I have this great saying that there's 3 ways you can look at things, and it's called the CIA approach. So you can control things, you can influence things, or you can accept things. And the only thing you can ever really control is your own thoughts and decisions. Everything else, I mean, I was working with this woman once, and I was like, so what can you control? She was like, well, I control all the washing in my house, I control the kids, and I was going, really? When they leave the house? And oh no, well, I have them told, they're not allowed to do this, and they're allowed to. And you really think they listen to you? Oh, yeah. I was like, okay then. So, some people think they have this huge control. When you have no control over how you're feeling, you tend to try and exert that control outwards, so as that you then have some control somewhere. And in terms of even things like, I've done quite a bit of work with people who self-harm. And for them, it's all about control. It's all about having that, well, they've said, or this has happened, and that's deemed me as a bad person, or that's deemed me as whatever. Now I'm going to take control of it. And if I'm a bad person, then I should be punished, and I'll burn myself, or or I'll starve myself, or any of these kind of things. Like anorexia, bulimia, various forms. Drinking too much is self-harm. Yeah. Biting your nails till they bleed is self-harm. I used to bite my nails down to the bottom of there. And I remember I met this guy once, and I put my hand out to shake his hands, and he was like, holy shit, look at your fingernail. And I was like, oh my God. And then one of my friends says to me, do you know, it's more hygienic to lick a toilet bowl than it is to bite your nails. And I was like, and then half an hour later I was going, but it's all about, I mean, we all like to think we have at least a good bit of control. And I think that's the way I kind of approach things now. I'll kind of go, right, hang on, where's the control here? Do I have the control here? No. Can I influence this situation? Well, I suppose I maybe could a wee bit, and I've already done that, so I just have to accept it now. And I think the more we take that acceptance, then the easier things become for us.
Yeah, for sure. Excuse me. Tell me about laughter yoga. That sounds amazing.
Laughter yoga is a really unique concept. Laughter yoga, it's laughing not in response to anything or for anything. It's just deciding that you're going to laugh. And what tends to happen is when you fake laugh, it triggers the response to have a real laugh. And when we laugh, we produce the same endorphins, pardon me, again as we would when we're floating. But it started in 1995. It was a guy, Dr. Madan Kataria. He was a cardiologist, and he, I don't know, have you seen the film Patch Adams?
Yeah.
So it was kind of based on that, but he was like, we shouldn't have to dress up as clowns or dress up as anything or do anything to be funny. So what he started doing was he started making his patients laugh when they were in recovery, and he was finding the patients who were laughing on a daily basis were the patients who were recovering quicker. I mean, like, they say children laugh for up to 300 times a day. As adults, we laugh 10 to 15 times a day on average.
Really?
And if you live on your own, or you're maybe, elderly, or you maybe, or you're just a bit of a recluse, or you're living with the symptoms of anxiety, depression, trauma, whatever it is, the chances are you maybe just don't even have, maybe goes days without laughter. So laughter yoga, it's about getting over the ego. It's about putting all that stuff aside. It's about going back to being a kid. We do clapping things where you have to go, very good, yay! And people kind of start going, oh my God, this woman is off her rocker. Like, what is going on here? Yeah. But it's just brilliant, because by the end of it, everybody's really into it, and they're doing, and you do all these exercises, and it's incorporated with yoga, with yoga breath.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, are you incorporating typical yoga poses and things like that in some of the different things?
Yeah, it's the yoga breath you use it with. Madan Kataria's wife, Madhuri, she was a yoga teacher, and so between the two of them, they started off. There was 5 people in a park in Mumbai. Who was doing this laughter yoga, and in no time there was like hundreds and then thousands of people doing it, and now it's like in countries, 10,000 countries, loads of countries all over the world. There's over 10,000 laughter yoga clubs, like that people regularly meet up. When we do it in Hydro's, and as I say, there's the amount of people that come in for the first time and they bring their yoga mat and stuff, and I'm like, yes. And then it's like, if you put the mat to the side, and then we would chat about the benefits of it. Our brains need 25% more oxygen than they already get to function properly. So taking in the laughter also helps with things like that. It's just a fantastic therapy. It's so good. And as I say, there's been a few people that have came in who the first session they've been like, oh my God, like, what am I doing here?
I can imagine.
And then
if you're kind of skeptical or you're nervous about coming initially, and then you show up and, like you said, everybody's clapping, and that would be really funny.
And there's a couple of kids come. There's 2 wee girls that come that are 8 years old, and it's a real role reversal for them, because they're kind of stepping back and looking at these adults and going, oh my God, what are they doing? Because one of the things we do is we would do like posh tea laughter. So I would say to everybody, right, put your hand out. Right, I want you to imagine that you have a saucer. I want you to imagine that you have a fine china cup. Hold on to the handle, put your pinky out, and then I want you to lift a cup of laughter and do this. And they look and go, seriously? And then you do it, and we do like lawnmower laughter. I want you to put your hand on the lawnmower, and I want you to pull the lawnmower and go and go off and away. And you see them going, oh my God, am I really doing this? But then by the end of it, they're like, oh, do another one. So it's really good, and it really gives a high energy. And then at the end, we do the yoga nidra. So the last exercise is always on the floor. And then by that time, everybody is, it's almost like contagious laughter. And you get people to the point that the tears are streaming, and they're like, right, stop it. And then somebody breathes and they're off again, or somebody does something else and they're off again, and then the next person laughs. So it's almost like, and that's the magic of it, is when people start, it's just a contagious laughter for absolutely no reason.
That's way cool.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds really fun.
Yeah.
What is the greatest thing, like, because everybody in the industry and things like that, and what's kind of the most profound thing that you've seen for a client or a customer that's come into your guys' place, as far as kind of life-changing experience that they've had because of floating, whether it's a health-related thing or whatever the case may be?
Oh God, we've had so many.
Yeah.
I mean, and I keep thinking back and thinking, wow, we've only been open 10 months, but we were involved with the Float On guys for the research into fibromyalgia. Mm-hmm. Northern Ireland has over 3% of the population live with fibromyalgia, which is one of the highest recorded rates. I don't know if there's any higher. I've researched, I can't find any, but I don't want to claim it is the highest. But
why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so high?
I was just about to say, I have this theory that there's more to it than this, and this is a very simplified. Post-traumatic stress disorder is storing of trauma in the central nervous system. fibromyalgia is storing of trauma in the peripheral nervous system. So if you think of it, even like if you're in a car crash and at the point of impact you go like that and you tense yourself up and the impact's there.
Yeah, you kind of lock your arms up.
That's has all this, and in sports they talk about muscle memory all the time, various different things. So you tense yourself all up, and then and on a neurological level, someone's just crashed into you. You've maybe been taken to the hospital. Somebody in their car's maybe been taken to the hospital. Possibly someone's passed away. Possibly there's been a child knocked over, or whatever it is. So on an unconscious level, you have all this stuff attached to it. And if you keep thinking about it, and every time you think about it, you go, oh my God, and you tighten yourself up. You're constantly pumping lactic acid in, so it's a response. It's a physical response to the mental stimulation that you're having. So with Northern Ireland having the highest rate for PTSD, kind of makes sense that they have one of the highest rates.
You think that's the correlation, like you said, how there's so much, everybody has experienced so much trauma.
Every single person that's came in with fibromyalgia has a trauma they can go back to, has something that they can go back to. Or, growing up and living in Belfast, I think sort of from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s more so, right up until sort of the peace process, I think everybody kind of lived with, for example, if you see, if we were out and about and we seen the police, it would give us a sense of security, it would give us a sense of safety, or a sense of curious, like, well, what's going on? Why are the police there? For a lot of families, and especially in certain neighbourhoods within Northern Ireland, seeing the police, you would draw your kids in closer. So then kids on an unconscious level are picking up. So they're picking up that energy, and they're then picking up like, oh, hang on a minute, the police. Like, why is this? Or, if they hear a helicopter, if I hear a helicopter going overhead, I think it's somebody out in their helicopter, or they're looking for something, or it's rescue or whatever. Yeah. Where for a lot of people, because they grew up with the helicopters flying around all the time, as soon as they heard of helicopters, they would tense themselves up like, oh God, there's a helicopter, I wonder what's going on. So there's lots of different, I think there's lots of lots of things that are unique to the population in Northern Ireland in terms of the troubles and stuff. And I think for so long there was such a focus put on this internal fighting that people forgot about domestic violence, people forgot about homelessness, people forgot about addiction, forgot about mental health, and then that came back a big whammy once we went through the peace process, and we were left with these people who were really struggling to cope with reality. And a lot of people that would come in would say, no, I didn't really have any trauma. Well, I went through a messy divorce 5 years ago, and they're like, right, and so you would chat away about that, and they would say, yeah, and then like my brothers, I was married to a girl who's married to my brother's wife, but then my brother he got shot with some paramilitary group, taken out in the street and shot, and you go, right. So would you see that as a trauma? Oh no, sure, that happened to everybody. Yeah. Blah blah blah. And then so it's normalised. Trauma has been normalised, and people kind of go. And again, it's that get a grip of yourself. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's okay, sure, that happened to everybody. It's just have a word kind of thing.
Yeah, it's challenging. As I'm sitting here thinking about it, and as you're describing it, I mean, it's a hard thing to get a group of people, such a large group of people in society, over that concept and idea and the realization, because it is so normal. Mm-hmm. It is such a way of life that it's probably been, I mean, obviously it's been happening for a very, very long time. Yeah.
But it's the resiliency of them as well. The people in Northern Ireland are they're like, 6 years I've been there, and and people would give you the shirt off their back, supposing it was like a snow blizzard outside and they had to walk home in bare feet with no shirt on. They would still, and it would kind of be like, oh well, that's what we do, and then they're off. It's just, they're very similar to the Scots. I think that's why I get on so well there, apart from obviously the history, but yeah, great bunch of people. But in terms of the original question that I've deviated from about 10 times now, I think we're doing the fibromyalgia research. We had some real breakthroughs. I mean, I FaceTimed my daughter earlier, and she was saying one of the girls who came in and done the 10 weeks, who's now taken one of our memberships and has been in for another 3 floats, has just said that she's been taken off Lyrica, so she's been taken off for gabapentin. And we've had other people. I had a girl who came in who was off work sick, and within sort of 6 weeks was back to work. We've had people that have came on. You've had people that have came in and said, "Oh my God, I've never slept any more than 3 hours a night for the last 30 years. I slept for 8 hours last night, you know, and then they're coming back in. So they're coming back in every week or every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. So, you know, we've had people, you know, returning their sleep patterns. We've had huge amounts of people that come in and go, well, I heard this podcast, and I'm like, stop, Joe Rogan. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, see if I ever meet Joe Rogan, I'm going to shake his hand. He's been fantastic for my business. But you know, I think a lot of people, you know, especially with the Joe Rogan experience, come in and they're like, oh, I want to see colours and visuals, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Joe Rogan floats, I think, almost every day. He has his own float pod. You know, there's a lot more to it than just that. But then we have had people that have came in and they've came in and when they come back out, they're like, wow, I've seen like swirling patterns, and I've seen this, and I felt this, and I felt that. So we've had everything from people having really kind of spiritual and kind of psychedelic kind of experiences, to people having sort of outer body stuff, to people having, you know, like there's a wee boy that came in, he was 14, and we have a contract with the National Autistic Society, one of the branches so far. And this wee boy came in, and his mum said, do you know, anything for some peace? She said, see, from the minute his eyes open, his mouth opens, and then he only sleeps for like 2-3 hours a night. If that, she says, so, you know, we're really hoping this works. So she says, so she came out, and I said, well, and she said, well, for the first 10 minutes he was going, Mum, do you think it's a bit warm in here? Do you think that's a... Mum, would you be able to open the door? Mum, what do you think it would look like if the light was blue? Mum, what do you think? And she was like, right, come on, now just... She says, and then within about 5-10 minutes, he just went dead quiet, and then nothing. And I said, so it worked then? She went, oh yeah, definitely. So I then says to him, and I said, what did you think of it? And he said, oh, it was lovely, it made my anxiety go away. And I was just like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
that's the cool stuff. That's the neat thing when you have a center, because it's like you just get to hear and see all that amazing stuff.
That's
and
it.
then what is your experience like when you float? Do you have that really cool psychedelic spiritual out of body, you know?
It really depends. I think when you float, there's so many variables, you know, like what you've had to eat, who you've been talking to, how much sleep you've had, what kind of day you've had, what time of the day it is. So I've had all sorts of experiences, and because we have the cabins that are big enough for 2 people, I float with my husband quite a lot. Now, flotation started off as something that was very much personal to me, and it was my kind of thing. And then when we opened Hydries and had the double float tanks, you know, my husband was saying, oh, it's cool, we'll get to float together. And I was like, yeah. And then I was thinking, oh shit, no, this is actually my thing. I don't know if I want to share this, but it was going, yeah, that'll be cool. And the first couple of floats were really difficult because, you know, he was farting and burping and moving.
It's a different flow when you're in there with somebody.
It.
I've done it before with my wife. It's a little different.
That's it. But we're used to it now. And now floating on my own seems like the strange thing, if you know what I mean. And there's always, I don't know if it's just a sense. I think because you become one with the whole environment. So whether you're in that environment yourself or you're in that environment with someone else, you know, it really all depends on, you know, on I suppose what kind of, as I say, all the different variables that are there.
That's why we always tell people, like, the first float typically kind of sucks, and then you have to get over that hump and keep coming back and keep practicing.
We had a girl that came in for the research and signed up for the 10 floats, and we had offered the 4 floats free and then the 6 floats at a reduced price. But you signed up there and then, and you paid your money there and then. So she came and she'd done her first float, and she came out and she was like, oh, I don't know if I like it. You know, I was so tense the whole time, and I'm thinking in my head, you need this, you really need this. And she's saying I was so tense, and it was, oh, I don't know if it's for me, and I said, well, look, I'll tell you a deal. We offer buy 2, get 1 free. So if after 3 sessions you decide this is not for you, I'll give you back the rest of the money and just do the 3 floats. If you decide it is, then you can continue to do so. So she was like, right then. So she's done the 2nd float, and she was like, still don't know. She's done the 3rd float, and she was like, actually, I would go as far as to say I enjoyed that. And then she went on and done the rest of them. And again, she now comes in quite a lot as well. Because it was totally, and she said that had I have only done 1, I would never have came back. Yeah. And I think sometimes that can be quite a difficult thing because we've had a few people there was a woman that came in with her daughter, and she wasn't very keen on it. Her daughter loved it. Her daughter then came back 2 weeks later and told me that she's a reporter for one of the main sort of public publications. She's an editor and reporter for the Ulster Star Group, and she asked if she could do an interview and if she could lobby on her behalf. So I was like, sure. So that she was in on the Friday. She was in on the Wednesday, came back in on the Friday, done the interview. The following Friday, she had like 4 MLAs, an MP, and a couple of heads of the council in Hydries chatting to me, and I was just like, that is absolutely brilliant. So now we've started like an ambassador programme, so she's now an ambassador for us, and you know, having somebody who has such a high profile it's been amazing, and that's because it's based on her experience of it, because she's using it for fibromyalgia.
That's so awesome. It sounds like you guys are really kicking ass. Like you said, you've been open in less than a year, and and you've got I think from the sounds of it, and I'm really, like, kudos to you. I think it's awesome. I think you've been able to incorporate all these different amazing aspects, all the stuff that I'm really into, that I really like, and you've just, it sounds like you're really nailing it.
I think as well, because Northern Ireland is quite a small space, things like MLAs and MPs are accessible. I have one of a lead psychiatrist in Northern Ireland.
What's an MLA?
An MLA is a elected member of Parliament.
Okay.
So it's kind of like it's the guys who run the country, basically. So there's a guy, Dr. Paul Miller, who came in. Like, we were only open a few weeks, and he came in and he was saying, he wanted to see on a neurological level where it kind of took him and what it was before he then referred it to his clients. So he came in and he came out and he was blown away, and I could see he was blown away, and I said, well, how was that? And he was like, wow. And I said, it's pretty cool, isn't it? And he went, the coolest thing, Viv, is that I was so busy thinking about what I was thinking about that I have arthritis in my ankles, and I'm always very careful about how what I do and the shoes I wear and things like that. He said, and I'm within about 5-10 minutes I was aware that my ankles were moving like this. It was almost like his body's way of saying, we can do this. You can still do this. Do you know what I mean? Stop protecting us. It was almost like take off the cotton wool. Yeah, we can get a bit sore and blah blah, but we need to have this stretch kind of thing. And he's going, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So he now floats. Well, he tries to float every week. He's been in the States quite a lot because he does quite a lot of work around schizophrenia. But himself, and there's another couple of doctors, he works. There's 3 of them all together, and they do quite a lot of the eye movement desensitization reprocessing training, which is one of the World Health Organization's preferred treatment for trauma. So he is now, like, tomorrow, like, I've spoke to Justin Feinstein quite a few times, like emails and stuff like that. So I'm going to meet up with him at some point tomorrow, because I've got loads of questions around treatment protocols, inclusions, exclusions, various different things like that, to take some of that back to Northern Ireland, because I think to hold up a small country like Northern Ireland that's been through so much as it is, to say, look at us, we have the highest rate of post-traumatic stress disorder. It'd be really nice to then hold the country up and say, look at this really innovative research that we're doing, and an effective evidence-based treatment modality, because that's exactly where flotation's moving towards. It's got a huge evidence base behind it now, and it'd just be really cool to be part of that.
That'd be amazing. I think it'd be super cool.
Yeah.
It's been absolutely amazing sitting down with you.
Thank you. It's been amazing chatting with you too.
I absolutely love it. I think we could go on for and on and on and on and on, but of course we have all of this busy, fun conference stuff that we're going to be doing.
Yeah.
So give everybody your website so they can go find out about.
Sure. You can find us at www.hydro-ease.co.uk. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we'd love to connect with anybody who's interested in doing anything at all in regards to flotation within Northern Ireland. We'd love to hear from you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming.
No, thank you for inviting me.
It was perfect timing. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hope everybody enjoyed that episode. I don't know how you could not have enjoyed that episode. Go check out all of the Vivian stuff. And if you live in Northern Ireland, because you guys, like you said, you're close to the UK, you're up in that area and things like that. And so it's a great place to go float. It sounds like.
We're just outside Belfast.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Awesome. Well, go have a beautiful, wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you.
And go float.
He did have one of the older boys in a headlock going, Namaste. We spend 80% of our energy every day fighting the effects of gravity. Like swirling patterns, and I've seen this, and I felt this, and I felt that. So if someone's floating for the first time, I'll say to them, it might sound like a bowl of Rice Krispies.